Right, so let's get on with some drawing and painting, shall we? I've set up a document to the rough proportions of the magazine for ImagineFX, obviously. You have to bear in mind when you're doing a double page spread like this that anything that falls down this central area may be sucked into what is called the gutter, which is where the pages join down the middle of the magazine, and so may be lost. So you don't put anything too important down there. You have to bear that in mind for your composition. I talked about setting up the document. Something that's new that I don't think I've pointed to yet is this. I won't actually do this, but I'll just show you the controls. In the resize the painting and the document controls, you have screen size and print size information, which is great because now if you've got any problems with resolution and how it's going to print and what resolution your printer is, stuff like that, you can set that all here, and it'll then tell you what it's going to look like, how big it's going to be on the screen, how many pixels. It's wonderful. It just simplifies things a lot. This is available in the expand canvas settings as well, obviously. This is good stuff. It helps a lot. So the document I've set up, I like to sketch in this way. I don't necessarily like to sketch on white, so I've using the bucket tool, I've killed the white by filling it with a sort of mid-tone, not particularly warm, not particularly cold colour. I've added layers to put shade, which will be darker tones, lighter tones obviously, and drawing over the top. I've also included a reference image, which is based on a bit of sketching I did earlier today to get warmed up. A couple of dwarves and a giant sort of type. But because the beta has been going on so long, we had a bit of a false start on this. I nearly started to do an image for this several months ago, which is where the idea for this came from. The idea is dwarf dentists, down in the mouth dentists, dealing with giants' dental problems and actually stealing gold from their teeth at the same time. A bit mean, really. I've loaded one image. You can load more than one image and you get this dialogue now, which is nice. And I've also loaded this image, which was the original one that I started a few months ago, but I was never particularly happy with it. You can move these where you want. I'm going to close that down now. You can move these where you want. He says you can resize it. He says not managing to resize it. Come on, resize. There we go. You can resize within the area. You can resize the thing itself. He says rotating it instead. Come on. Can you see how well I'm doing with this? That's what I'm trying to do. It's a bit big. I'm going to make it smaller. I won't refer directly to this because, as I said, I wasn't happy with this composition at all. And you can drag these around where you want, and I'm on a PC, as I mentioned before. I can right click and hide the reference. I won't do that at the moment because I want to see it. Also this, as I mentioned before in the earlier video, you can scale this down. I don't want it this big, I don't need it this big, I just need to be able to get to the layers. Although while I'm playing with layers, I'll just show you these. You've got these new controls. You can drag the opacity. That's an opacity slider. Drag up and down to get it to go up and down. See, perfect. You can lock the layer. I've shown you the drop down menu before, and that's that's hide and show. And all the layers have got that. That's great, isn't it? Particularly like the new visibility one, the new transparency one. That's going to be useful. So holding spacebar to move it back across here, and we'll actually get around to doing a bit of work now. So I want my giant to look kind of like that, but so far I haven't managed that. He's not even close, is he? He's much too good looking. You can see what my gauge of good looking is. Thank God you can't see me. I'm holding down Shift to make the eraser smaller. Now I won't show all of the sketching process because it'll get very tedious. I do a lot of rubbing out and changing my mind about things. So that would be very tedious for you to have to live through. And about now I should put something gentle like 9-inch nails on in the background to keep you occupied. I think the thing is, I think his nose is nothing like big enough, is it? His eye is too low down to be up there to make it more hideous. Oh, instantly better. Or closer, not better, but closer to what I'm trying to get to. For my idea of giants, these giants are so big, he's lumbering and not particularly intelligent. That's the sort of look I'm aiming for here. Not suggesting all giants are that way. Not suggesting all dwarves are like these either. These are pretty stereotypical fantasy novel dwarfy types. I know Eraser's playing around a little bit now. Does that sometimes when I've got too many things going on in the system. Big bushy eyebrows. Let's make this a bit better, shall we? Getting closer to the kind of thing I'm looking for. But I do a lot of erasing. I use the eraser as much, if not more, well, probably more than the pencil or the actual painting tools, because my way of working is rather fluid. I kind of make it up as I go along, so I make a lot of mistakes, but I know I'm going to do that. It's not the most efficient way to work, it's just the way I work. It's still a good idea to plan things out, not too strictly from my perspective, because that can actually kill the creativity side of it. Do I want his mouth open wider than this? I might do, so you can actually see some of the stuff going on inside. Jaw coming down there. Oh, that's nicer proportions. I think that's got a more giant feel to it. It's a disproportionate jaw size. Not quite sure how strong his muscles must be to lift that thing. That's roughly where the curve of his cheek comes round. His eyebrows go across there. That's me drawing where his other eye socket would be on the other side of his nose. You won't see that because his nose will be in the way. I just want to make sure you wouldn't be able to see it past his nose. No, I don't think so, because you're kind of looking up at him. It helps if you're drawing giant things to be looking up at them, because it makes them feel more giant. Yeah, I'm not really used to working and talking at the same time. I can do both separately. Corner of the jaw. Mastoid coming down there. Oh, that's the muscle that comes from behind the ear. And that bulges out when you strain your neck. At certain angles, of course. Something that comes down to there, that'll be nicer. As you can see, this is going to take me some time, so I won't make you watch this. What I'll do is just show you what else I will do while I'm playing with this. I will work on this layer, which I've labelled light. It's best to label your layers as you go. You can do that in here, on here, set layer name. Okay, you can also edit the texture as I've pointed out before. You can edit the blend modes, as I've pointed out before. You can transform layer contents. You can merge down when you're comfortable that you're not going to change a layer anymore. You can merge it down with what's below. You can export a layer to another document or save it. But for the moment, I'll just use the pencil still. I'll pick another colour. Probably to contrast the yellow, I'll use some kind of blue because they're not sharp better, and make it obviously lighter. And you see I will pick out the thing to shade, help describe the form. This is more for as much for me working out the shapes as I go along, and the light. This is why I like to do things on separate layers, because it makes it much more editable. With this more fluid way of working, it does mean you make a lot of mistakes. It's a bit like searching for the right line, searching for the right shape. And because I don't tend to use photo reference at all, I try and work it out on the paper as much as possible. Then I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. That's why I'm not particularly fast as well. But it's the way I like working. It's the way I'm used to working. It gives me my look, I suppose you might say. Inept is a word people use quite a lot. So anyway, you can see how that will work to just pick out the forms. And then on shade, I would probably set that to my favourite multiply. I'll probably use this tool mainly because I don't want to change that. What I want to change is the setting. I want a bit of texture, so I've set the pressure down a bit. Let's get rid of that. And I'll also let's pick a warm colour. A warmer colour. Let's pick like a brown, like a dark brown. Now with multiply will make that probably quite a bit. Might find it's too dark and it's too textured too. So I up the pressure. No, it's still too much. I'm using Control Z to get rid of that. Now I think I've gone back too far and I'm unchanging the blend mode. Yes, I've done that. You see, when you change the blend mode, that's quite good actually, because you get a little marker on there that tells you, so you know, and you can change it there by clicking on there. So if I click on that, that'll pop up. That's another addition that makes it easier to use. The way to get rid of, to make this less pronounced, I'll knock down the opacity. Suddenly it'll be kinder. I think the problem I'm having here is that I've got the paper setting. I don't like the paper setting. Let's edit the texture. Let's go for a fine paper. I like things not too. I'm going for tiny grain because I don't look grain size really small because I don't like things interfering with the form until I want them to. So get rid of that and see if this is any better. For me, that's better. Yeah. See, it's still too dark. But if you're just blocking in general shapes, it starts to help you make sense of what's really going on. If you can visualize just in line, that's great. I can to a certain degree, but there comes a point where I just have to try and work out what's going on with the shapes. And this is how I would do it. So I will be doing more of this, but I'm not going to make you watch. I'll come back when hopefully it's got a bit further, and there won't just be long silences with me scribbling away. Okay, talk to you in a bit. Right, well I've taken it this far, using the same tools as I was using before, the chalk and the pencil over a tonal background. All I've done is I've divided the shade into two layers. If I turn one off, you can see, because it just means because I've turned the visibility down, the transparency down quite a lot. They were quite grey and I didn't have the depth of tone I wanted. And I've also added, started to add the dwarf activity over the top, because I want to play with that, so I've put that on a separate layer. So you're turning that on and off now. See that okay? But to make sure I don't wander into that gutter I talked about earlier, the bit where the page divide will go in the magazine, I'm going to just add, I've added another layer there, and I'm going with the stencils, using the ruler. Get a couple of those to start with. I'm holding spacebar and dragging. Setting up the naught at the corner. I want to get roughly halfway across. Holding shift down and using the control at the end so it doesn't, so that it stays horizontal as well. Naught, 45 and a half. So 27 3/4. Nah, that's wrong, isn't it? 20. Yep. Good at maths, I am too. And about there. Now, if you hold Control, it will give you straight lines now. And if you hold Shift at the same time, that doesn't look quite right. Make it a bar. It would show up more if I made it bigger, wouldn't it? That's better. I've picked a colour that will show up. Now you'll find there's a conflict of interest if you try and hold Control for a straight line when you're too near the ruler. You get the rotate option, because that is a shortcut for rotating stencils. So you have to be aware of that if you're trying to draw a straight line near one of the stencils. There will be a conflict of shortcuts. I'm wondering if that's something I might resolve later. That still doesn't look quite right to me. I think my maths is... you can see why I became an artist rather than a mathematician. 22 now, 20. Yeah, that's about right, I think. But that should mean... I'm dragging this other one out of the way, I probably won't use it. In fact, I will get rid of that. I'm right-clicking. Remove the stencil. I'll leave that one there because it might come in handy later. Now over here, my thought for the layout is that this will be the centre of interest. Composition sort of sweeps over to there. My cursor has disappeared, so you can't. I'll make the brush bigger, then it'll show up. Or maybe it won't. Why is that not doing it? Right, I've switched tools because I'd forgotten that the pencil tool, the cursor, even when there were a choice of cursors which you can edit in preferences. Cursors. You can have precise, you can have outline, which is what I've set it to, or you can have tool. This is quite nice, but it doesn't really suit me. I'll show you. Look, it's alright, but to me that's in the way a bit. So I prefer the I prefer the brush size outline. So I've switched to that tool because that just shows it more. Right, back to where we were. Focal point more or less there. Composition sweeps around here. I imagine the title going here. I'll probably lose this behind boxes. Maybe some of that as well. Oop, didn't mean to do that. So that is we're likely to lose. My thoughts at the moment are to bring this forward, knock that back with aerial perspective, depth of field, that kind of thing, and focus much more on there, have all the fun frolics going on there, with a hint of a few things going on over here, to allow for the text to go in there. Now I'm talking from the perspective of an illustrator. I illustrate for children's books mostly, and whether you're doing internal or cover artwork, you need to make allowances for wherever blocks of text are going to go. This is something that if you're just doing straightforward pictures for presentation, you don't have to worry about this, but for illustration purposes, in terms of composition, it is something you have to make allowances for. So that's why I'm talking about it now, because this is the job I'm doing on this particular occasion. Now you can see I've added a horizon line here to help me work out whether things are above or below your eye line. You're looking up at his face, you're looking down at his arm, that kind of thing. That's always a good thing to do. I've done that on the same layer as I've put the gutter in so that it doesn't interfere with anything else. Let's do a bit of drawing, shall we? My idea at the moment is for them to be having some sort of derrick or drilling rig coming towards him and him looking a bit nervous. He doesn't look really nervous yet, we'll work on that. I'm also wondering about, in this space where the text will go, to make it a more fun illustration, to have another giant sort of peering over some mountain, getting a bit nervous about the prospect of having to have the same done to themselves. I was doing that in the original illustration, but I'd placed the figure very badly, and it was a bit of a squeeze, so I'll try and do that better. But what we want the dwarves doing is the question next. As I said, it'd be quite nice to have some sort of huge drilling rig coming towards him that he's going to get very nervous about, make it look very spiky and nasty. Sort of thing you really wouldn't want in your mouth. That's probably a bit big. Not quite sure what that's supposed to be. I think probably a good idea is for me to go off and come back with some ideas again, as I did before with the sketching. Take it a bit further, then we'll actually have more to discuss and you won't just all go to sleep. Right, so I've moved it a little bit further on now, as you can see, carrying on with the same processes, but I've decided that the composition actually could do to be moved from left to right a little bit. I've added the anaesthetic here, the application of a giant hammer, which I hadn't originally planned, but it's not very clear, so that's another reason I've got that sort of much spare. I want to move it just that little bit there, and we can accomplish that as we could in version 2.5 by adding a group. I'll make this a bit bigger so I can actually see what I'm doing, holding down control, which would be command. You see it's made a group there above the layer where I use the drop down menu from, and now I'll just load them all into it. Takes a little bit of time. This is another new function, the fact that there's a little timer that comes up just to indicate that the program is doing things. So all little touches like this of making this a much nicer program to work in. I liked it before, I like it a lot more now. you can see what I'm doing here, so I'll just cut this bit and do it without commentating. Right, so I've put everything in a group now. Drop down menu, transform group contents. I'm not sure if I can nudge this. No, I can't. But I can when my processor catches up with me. Oh, I can nudge it. That's good. Using arrow keys, I can nudge it along. I'm using the right arrow key. But it's going to take a little bit of time for my wonderfully fast processor to catch up with me. Now's a good time to look out the window, drink some coffee. Begin seeing it moving now. I've left the center line and the horizon line outside the group because I don't want them to move, of course. But as you can see, I'm gradually giving myself a little bit more room. I can't move the cursor because it's busy on the left hand side. Nudging is something you can do in transform layers now that wasn't available before, which of course is very handy for precise placement. As you can see, my placement isn't very precise, but I'm sure you lot out there are much more precise than I am. I'm keeping nudging, so again I'll just wig out while it takes its time to do this. Right, that's nudged probably far enough along now. As you can see, I'm still not too close to the gutter there, but I think I've got a little bit more room this end to explain what's going on here. I'll have to patch that up, which I won't bother making you watch. I'll do that off camera, and now I will press enter to confirm this transformation. It'll take a little bit longer because it's got to do with all the layers, of course, because we're working with a group. And I am still working at about third full resolution at the moment. This image will be 3 times the pixel size for when it comes to being printed. Right, at this point I've moved on a little bit further. I've extended to the left here. Put that on so you can see the cursor. Extended to the left here and filled that in a bit. Made that into a sort of more of a sort of cave where the anaesthetic is kept. Added a bit more tree detail, a few more details here and there. Added that figure in the background that I talked about adding. This bit's still a bit needs something there. But I still have to bear in mind that there will be text over most of this area, so I'm not too worried about that. Something will crop up, something will occur to me to go down there, but the light pattern is beginning to fall into place now. I'm tempted to stop there as the sketching stage and start to do some colour. I think that's probably a good idea now, so let's call a stop to this and let's move on to colour.